Hello, boys and girls. Hopefully, this thing is going to work. And this is Screencast-O-Matic. This is the thing I was telling you guys about. And we are going to do the flipped classroom thing where I teach you through this video. And you guys can work at your own pace. It's going to be awesome. Um, we are going to cover Chapter 8 in this video. And Chapter 8 is about revolutions in Europe and in Latin America, as you can see right up here. Um, Time period about 1790 to 1848, and you'll see there is a big revolution in 1848. And of course, yes, the nation of France, which typically has most of the serious revolutions going on in Europe. But before we get to that, the first thing we need to talk about are ideologies. Now, first of all, what is an ideology? An ideology, as we've talked about before, is simply a belief system. It is a set of beliefs that someone has come to gather and gain through probably years of thinking and thought process. It's not just a random thought, but it's actually a set of beliefs that someone over the years has come to live by. And of course, we see two different ideologies in Europe in the 1800s. We have a conflict of ideologies. In fact, the Congress of Vienna, as you can see right here, and we've already talked about that, that was in 1815, for those of you that don't remember, and that was after Napoleon was ousted from France. It kind of sends Europe actually into turmoil for the next 30 years. It does more harm, I would say, than good. Now, how does it do that? Well, the members of the Congress of Vienna, led by Prince Metternich, if you guys remember, they were what we would call 1800s conservatives. And what is 1800 European conservatism? First of all, you have to understand that liberalism and conservatism in Europe are completely different from a liberal and conservative today. Somebody today would maybe say a liberal was someone who voted for Obama and is a, quote, tree hugger. Somebody may say that a conservative is someone who would vote for Romney and is some right wing, this, that, and the other. Well, it's not the same in Europe. Right here, we have conservatism. Three things that conservatives in Europe like to believe in. Number one is they want to maintain the monarchy system. Now, why would they want to maintain the monarchy system? Well, it's pretty simple. They saw the Enlightenment as complete and utter chaos. According to conservatives, they believe that the Enlightenment only led to bad. And you may be able to understand where they're coming from when you look at the American Revolution, the French Revolution, deaths, violence, war, etc. They all think that the Enlightenment caused all this. So they want to maintain the old order, the monarchy system. They also want to try to have a permanent peace in Europe, which is number two right here. Now, unfortunately, this doesn't really happen, but they were visionaries that believed, of course, their way was the right way and the only way. And they wanted to disallow political opposition, meaning anybody that tries to have a revolution, what do you have to do? You have to immediately knock it out. If someone tries to stir up revolt, you have to end it. So they did believe in using violence against their political opposition. Now, question is, was the Congress of Vienna a victory for conservatives? Well, if it was a victory, it was short-lived because of all the other revolutions that come to be. Of course, we've already talked about the concert of Europe. Conservatives support the old order, restoration of monarchies, etc. And again, they believe that Enlightenment thinking led to chaos. Just a little bit of review. Another little bit of review. Remember, Prince Metternich was the person that resided at the conference. Now, who was he? He was the minister of the state in Austria. Again, they sought to suppress revolutionary ideas, crush all uprisings. That's just review about 1800s European. So that was review, and something may have just messed up, but that's okay. We're going to go to liberalism now down here. And liberalism, oftentimes in the 19th century, 1800s, was a lot of times called bourgeois liberalism. Why was it called bourgeois liberalism? Well, most of the 19th century liberals, as you can see here, were bourgeois. They were the lawyers, doctors, businessmen, etc. They were the upper middle class. Upper middle class, okay? And the 19th century liberals were very different than the conservatives, mainly because they all supported the Enlightenment. You can think of the Enlightenment as sort of the barrier between conservatives and liberals. Liberals obviously supporting it. Here are four things that the 19th century liberals believed in. Number one, government based on constitution, separation of powers, rulers elected by people. They believed in having a just and fair government system with a constitution, with legislative, executive branches, etc. Number two, government was limited by a written constitution. It was limited by a constitution. The constitution was not to say these are all the things that we are going to stop you from doing. It's more, these are the things that the government is not allowed to do to the individuals. Individual liberty. Number three, protection of all individual liberties. Just as we said, the government is there to protect the people, not to bring the people down and suppress them. And then number four, universal manhood suffrage, meaning all men have a right to vote for who leads a country. Whereas in a monarchy system where conservatives would support, you don't necessarily get to vote. Only a few people get to choose. The elected upper class aristocrats sort of help choose the king and queen or whoever the leader is, instead of everybody getting a say. Now, let's take a look at an actual political spectrum over here. The left versus the right. You hear a lot of times left wing versus right wing and what that actually means. Let's take a look at it. Now, in the U.S. today, guys, the first two dots are really all we deal with. Well, I take that back. Some conservatives would claim that a lot of these people are actually socialists when they're really not. And then some liberals would, well, no, I don't think anybody's claiming that anybody's pro-monarchy. So, but anyway, liberalism and conservatism are the first two. Those are not extreme. Not extreme. So we have more of a centrist view in the U.S., where people are conservative, people are liberal. We usually don't go too far this way or too far that way. But if you keep looking, monarchism, even more to the right. Socialism, even more to the left. And then it gets very, very scary. And we call scary radical. And we call radical right wing or left wing. And Nazism, that would be Hitler. Okay, very, very bad person. Actually, probably the worst person ever. But he would be considered over here, so you're getting very, very hardcore. And he also had a form of fascism as well. And then communism. Okay, communism and Nazism are actually sort of the opposites. And it's interesting because a lot of people thought Germany would turn communist. They actually turned the opposite of communist when Hitler rose up. And then finally, fascism is the farthest to the right. Anarchism, the farthest to the left. Freedom over here. Slavery over here. Now, let's get to something that's very important in Europe in the 19th century, which is nationalism. 1815 in Europe, you have nationalism begin to form, and we're going to talk about nationalism in Eastern Europe, which is a part of the Austrian Empire. Remember the Habsburgs of the Austrian Empire. Nationalists share common identity and usually common language. They are usually the same ethnicity, and they usually get along with each other because they share many beliefs, and they share culture. Well, this oftentimes, when it becomes hardcore, leads to the persecution of others. We actually saw this a little bit with Napoleon and the French Revolution. There's a term called chauvinism, which is right here, chauvinism. And chauvinism, this term was named after Nicolas Chauvin. He was one of Napoleon's soldiers, and he was known to be this highly nationalistic French individual. His excessive and excessive and belligerent patriotism. Patriotism oftentimes goes hand in hand with nationalism. Um, this kind of nationalism, this is scary. This is the scary kind. Often leads to national and racial superiority, and then sometimes, in worst cases, genocide, which we saw with these guys up here. Okay, so that gives you a background on political things going on in Europe. Now, let's switch to the revolts. Well, first, let's talk about Eastern Europe, and this is going to be really important when we talk about the Austrian Empire. The Austro-Hungarian Empire, as it's soon to be called, you see here are the ethnic groups in Austria, and here's where nationalism becomes an issue. Um, right here, these people are German. If you look at the chart, the red, Austria, they're German people. Um, Bohemia are Czech Republic. The green are Hungarians. Let's keep going here. Croatia, obviously the Croats. Up here, we actually have some Poles, Poland. Over here, Ukrainians. We can keep going and going. You guys can kind of see Slovakia, Slovaks. You've got some Romanians scattered in here. Just all different kinds of ethnicities, guys. That's a problem because guess what? This is one empire, this whole thing. They're supposed to live in unity together. And look at all the differences in unity that we actually have. This is an issue. It's going to keep becoming an issue. And actually, this is one of the things that starts World War I, is that everybody just gets sick and tired of Austria, and finally some terrorists go and assassinate somebody very important, which you'll learn about second semester, and that kind of sets off the war. But anyhow, this is called oftentimes the Balkan Peninsula over here because you have so many different ethnicities. They just call it the Balkans, and over here as well with Serbia, Bulgaria, Romania, and Montenegro. The Balkan Peninsula erupts in revolution against the Ottoman Empire, which are the Muslims, and the Serbs are the first to revolt. Serbian leader, here is his name right here, Milos Obrenović, asks Russia for help. And the reason he asks Russia for help is because right now Russians and Serbs speak the same language, have the same cultural identity. So what are they thinking right here? Maybe a little bit of nationalism. Okay, maybe a little bit of nationalism. Maybe Russia will help us out because of our similar language and identities. Now, the Serbs end up gaining their independence in 1867 from the Austrian Empire. Greece is soon to follow, or Greece actually is before, excuse me. Greece gains their independence in 1830. I don't know why I have those, where I have them. And then there are other revolts in Spain, Portugal, and Italy. So there are many nationalist revolts going on right now. And we just want to make that clear to you guys before going into the kind of the main revolutions. The first main revolution, actually both main revolutions, take place in none other than France. The Revolution of 1830 is the first. Now, here's what's essentially going on in France, guys. After Napoleon, we have the Congress of Vienna. Okay, let's just refresh. I'll just write it right here. Congress of Vienna. This ends up lasting from, it is in 1815. Okay, so for about 10 years, we have stability in France. Okay, about 10 years we have stability. Just a little review right there. Now, what happens is, in the Congress of Vienna, which we talked about, their main goal is conservatism and restoration of monarchies, meaning bring back absolute rulers. So, guess what happens? An absolute ruler takes power in France in 1824. His name is Charles X, right here. Now, Charles X is does not kind of start well with the people. Reason being, he immediately suspends the legislature.